Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to be making homemade chicken pho, traditional Vietnamese egg rolls, and a side of pickled daikon radish and carrots for dinner tonight. We have a set of grandparents coming over tonight for dinner, and this just sounded really good. I've always wanted to make this homemade, and so today is the day. So the first thing in my big pot is we actually need to make the broth for the pho. And I just put a little bit of oil in the bottom of my pan, and I'm gonna let this heat up. While this is heating up, I'm going to prepare some of the vegetables we're gonna need in the broth. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is prep just a couple onions. These are the last of my onions that I harvested from last year's garden. So they're pretty teeny tiny. So I have 4 of them here, but if you just had 1 large onion, you could do that. I always thought that this seemed really intimidating to make this recipe, and I've never attempted it before, so all these recipes are brand new to me. So we're gonna see how it turns out. But after watching quite a few videos on it and reading quite a few recipes, I think we're gonna be able to come up with a really delicious homemade pho broth, because it's all about the broth, and homemade traditional style egg rolls. So now you can see just how tiny my little onions are, but they taste good even though they're itty bitty. So I'm just gonna peel the paper off. These are not gonna be in our final soup. This is just gonna flavor the broth. Because I harvested these last year, they're just starting to sprout, which is no big deal. I am though gonna go ahead and just remove that little bit of a sprout. So there's our onion, and then I do have a pretty good sized piece of ginger. I washed this really well because I'm not going to peel it. I'm gonna cut it in half, and we're going to add that to our broth. And then I'm just gonna prepare the garlic now, even though we're gonna add this a little bit later. I'm just gonna cut the top and the bottom off, and we'll end up throwing this whole thing into our broth in just a bit. So now what we're gonna do is actually char our ginger and our onions. So I'm gonna carefully lay these in cut side down. Oh, it already smells really good. So I've never done this before, so it's only been about a minute. I just wanted to check the bottom of the ginger to make sure it's not burning. Oh, look at that. The onions are about as charred as I want them to get, I think. So what I'm gonna do is take these out. The ginger is definitely taking quite a bit longer to get some color to it. So I'm gonna let the ginger continue to cook. It smells incredible, and we only have 2 ingredients heating up already. I think I'm happy with this coloring. So what I'm gonna do now, because this is gonna continue to brown just a little bit more, is I'm gonna go ahead and just toast my spices. These are star anise, and I need 5 of these. So while these are kind of blooming and toasting a little bit, 2, 4, 5, our ginger will brown up just a little bit more. And now I'm gonna add 1 cinnamon stick, and we're gonna toast that too and just kind of let those waken up in the hot oil. Pho has always been one of my favorite comfort foods, and I've always been intimidated to make it. After reading a few recipes, I think we're gonna be able to do this. You just need a couple key ingredients and a little bit of time, and the goal is to have a very comforting, delicious meal. So here I have a whole chicken that was already in pieces. I bought the whole chicken in pieces. I wanna make sure that when I'm cooking this broth that I have pieces with the skin on and bone on, because that's going to increase the depth of flavor. So that's one whole chicken, and then I'm gonna add just a couple chicken thighs to add a little bit more delicious flavor to this broth. We want to just barely cover the chicken with the water because we're going to make a very intense flavor broth. And so by not diluting it with a ton of water, that's one way we're going to be able to do that in a relatively quick amount of time. About an hour and a half, we're going to let this cook after we add just a couple more ingredients to our broth to intensify the flavor. So the next thing I'm going to add is just a little bit of sugar. Traditionally, you would use rock sugar. I don't have that, so I'm just using some white sugar. Next, we're gonna add one bunch of cilantro stems and all, fennel seed, salt, fish sauce. I'm gonna go ahead and cover this. I have it on high right now, but from what I understand, if you want a nice, clear broth, not a cloudy broth, you do not want to have your broth boil at a hard boil. You want it to gently simmer. So once this just comes up to temperature, I'm going to turn the heat down until it's just a soft simmer. And that's how easy it is to make our chicken pho broth. I don't know why it always felt incredibly intimidating to me to make this. Now, we still need to make the noodles, and we're going to now start on our filling for our Vietnamese egg rolls. But so far, this has been extremely easy. I was gonna start on the filling for the egg rolls next, but the pickled daikon and carrot says that it does better if it sits for a little bit longer. So I thought it would be good to go ahead and get the brine for the pickled carrots and daikon radish next. So I just added water to my pot. I'm turning this up, and we're gonna heat this up so we can dissolve our sugar, and we can heat the brine up a little bit so it can just slightly soften our daikon radish and our carrot. So that is 1.5 cups of water, 3/4 cup of rice wine vinegar. And then we need, I'm gonna use a different measuring spoon. I've got 3/4 cup of just organic cane sugar here. We're gonna cook this until this dissolves. While this is coming to a boil and dissolving, we can prep the vegetables. And I do wanna take a quick peek. It's not quite boiling yet. I love trying new recipes and trying new things because I have 2 vegetables here I have never cooked with before. I've eaten them, but I've never cooked with them. This is a daikon radish. It's a very large radish. This is actually the smallest one I could find at the store. Then we've got carrots, which obviously most of us have cooked with carrots before. And then this is called yuca. I might not be pronouncing that correctly, but this is gonna go in our egg rolls. So I'm gonna go wash all 3 of these vegetables, which we are gonna need for the next 2 recipes. We are gonna peel these vegetables before we actually cook with them, but I can hear that my brine is now at a boil. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off because my sugar has dissolved at this point. I'll just set the lid on there like that. And I think this is now, yes, it is at a boil. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna take the lid off there for a minute. I'm gonna turn this way down so that it's at a very gentle simmer, and I wanna skim off some of this white foam. By doing this step, it is supposed to give us a nice, clear broth. And I can tell that by doing this, I'm skimming off most of my fennel seeds because my fennel seeds are floating. So I might have to add a few more fennel seeds. I have seen when I was researching recipes, you can get almost like a spiced tea bag that you can put in here that has all your spices in it for pho. So instead of putting individual spices, you just put the entire bag into your broth. And that would be nice because then you wouldn't have to try to skim around your spices in your pot. And this feels like it's now at a nice, gentle simmer. This is gonna make way more chicken than we actually need for our pho. And that's what most of the recipes said, but because we want a nice chickeny concentrated broth, we're cooking more chicken than we need, and then we'll just consider that meal prep, and we'll be able to use that chicken in other dishes later in the week. You could even make your own spiced tea bag if you have a little bit of muslin or cheesecloth or something like that. I just didn't really think about that until just now. But that's okay, I've got extra fennel seeds. I'll just throw a few extra fennel seeds in here because I'm definitely scooping out most of what I put in here. Or what you could do is put the fennel in after this step, since we didn't toast the fennel like we did the cinnamon and the star anise. So that's looking a lot clearer already. I'm just gonna go ahead and replace the fennel that I fished out earlier. And I like this kind of gentle simmer. It's just barely bubbling. I have seen daikon radish in my grocery store for many years, and I have never bought one. This is the first time I'm buying one, but I've eaten it. I love the pickled daikon radish and carrots that you get when you go to a Vietnamese restaurant. And so it's gonna be fun to see if we can create something that tastes just as good. I think I'm gonna cut the bottom end of this one off. Let's taste it, because I've never tasted this before when it's been fresh. I've only ever tasted it pickled. Fun thing about trying new recipes is sometimes you try new ingredients. Super crunchy. It tastes like a radish, but a very sweet radish. It's super mild. I don't know if it's the radish I happen to get, but it's got that crunch and radish flavor, but without the spice that sometimes I associate like a little round radish with. So that's delicious. I think in even like a salad, I would like this daikon radish better than say a red radish. This would be really good on tacos too. So I'm gonna set that aside. I'm gonna go ahead and peel my carrots. When I say I associate pho as comfort food, it's not for when I'm sick, because I've actually never eaten pho when I'm sick, because I've only ever eaten it at restaurants. I associate it with comfort food because when I was a dental hygienist, I hardly ever went out for lunch. But a few times a year, I would go to lunch by myself because we had a local Vietnamese restaurant not too far from where I worked, and I would go eat lunch by myself in the quiet and enjoy it. I still to this day, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, when I'm out running errands by myself for a fun, quiet, self-care thing, I will go to get pho by myself and just enjoy eating out by myself for lunch. I know that some people don't enjoy eating out by themselves, but pho for lunch by myself feels like the most productive self-care I can have. I just love it. So now I'm cutting up the yuca, and this is very hard. I was gonna try to use the peeler and that did not work. So I'm gonna peel it using a knife. I've probably eaten this before because I've had Vietnamese egg rolls, but I've definitely never tasted it on its own before. I think I only need half of it. I also, when I was at the store, looked for the smallest one I could find. So let's give this a try. This is gonna be grated in the egg rolls. Wow. I'm gonna taste it again. I don't even know if you're supposed to eat this raw, but I am. My first reaction is that it's very sweet. It almost has the taste of an Asian pear and the crunch of an Asian pear, if you've ever had an Asian pear before. Very sweet, very crunchy. Same texture as an Asian pear almost, but the aftertaste has like a vegetable aftertaste, but not like a bitter vegetable aftertaste, just like a really mild vegetable flavor. That's really good. Now it can be hard to base a whole vegetable group on just tasting one, but the one that I got I think tastes really delicious, so that is kind of fun, trying new vegetables for the first time. So now what I'm gonna do is finish prepping my vegetables for the pickled vegetables. I'm gonna line these up so that they're somewhat the same size. I think you can cut the carrots and daikon whatever size you want to do the quick pickle. I'm just going to try to have them be as close to the same size as possible. And I'm going to try to cut kind of like little matchsticks. This is where a sharp knife is going to be key, and it's going to make this process a lot easier. So these will soften up once we put them in the brine. The carrots are now done. Now I have to figure out how to prep this one. Did I want to cut it? I don't think so. I think I'm going to have these be, I should have cut this in thirds, I think, instead of in half. This is a little bit easier to cut through than the carrot. I'm going to cut them in half. That'll be a little bit closer to the same size as the carrot. I just tasted my pickling brine and it was too sweet for me. I like a very vinegary pickle. So I just doubled the rice wine vinegar in this recipe because I want something with a little bit more of a zip to it. But I'll link all these recipes that I'm gonna be making down in the description box if you want to try to make them yourself. So I'm going to kind of layer between the daikon radish and the carrots so that I get a good mix. I'm not canning these, I'm just using this canning jar to do the pickling in. I may have prepped a few more vegetables than I'm gonna be able to fit in this jar. But that'll be okay, I can grab another jar out if I need to. Okay, so here are our pickled vegetables. So I'm gonna put a lid on these and then we'll pop these in the fridge. I think I'm gonna let them sit at room temperature for a little bit so that they can stay a little bit warmer because that brine is still warm, and help kind of the pickling process go, I think, a little bit quicker than if I was to pop these into the fridge right away. So these, I think, are going to be delicious. And it smells incredible in here. That broth smells so good. I cannot wait for dinner. So now what we're gonna do is get going on our filling for our egg rolls. So let me read this recipe one more time. Oh, we need to get the noodles soaking too. So let me get some warm water on. I'm gonna get everything out, and then we'll get going on the egg rolls. There are two things we need to soak before we can make the filling. We need to soak the mushrooms because they're dried, and the noodles. Rereading this recipe, I'm pretty sure this is called yakima. I was not pronouncing the name of this correctly, and I still could be pronouncing that incorrectly. So I apologize if I am not saying the name of this root vegetable correctly. I am cutting this egg roll recipe in half because there's gonna be 4 adults here tonight and 1 child. And so I think if I make the whole recipe, that's gonna be way more egg rolls than we need. It does say you can freeze them before you fry them, but I think just to start, we're going to half this recipe. So I have these noodles here that I got at my local Asian market. I couldn't find these mushrooms. These are dried black fungus, but they're called wood ear mushrooms. I may have been able to find them at a different market, but I just went ahead and ordered these on Amazon. So what we need to do is actually hydrate these noodles and rehydrate these mushrooms. And we need to wash these mushrooms because on the packaging, it says that they are dried before they're washed. So that was really good that it said that on the directions so that I know that I need to wash them. So I've got a bowl here. I'm gonna put my noodles in. And I've got hot water. It's not boiling, it's just really hot. And I did not get enough. So let me get a little bit more water. So this is what the wood ear mushrooms look like. And they're completely dry, so we need to reconstitute them. While those are soaking, I'm gonna get this grated. I think I'm gonna run my knife through this just a little bit because those are pretty long shavings of that. I'm also, while I'm waiting for these to hydrate, you can see how much this is plumped up already. I am going to also grate 2 shallots. Those are very strong shallots. Oh, I need to take a break from them. These noodles are done, so I'm gonna go strain these. So I just put my noodles through some cold water. I have it in a strainer, and I'm gonna put it in this bowl so it can continue to drip and it's not sitting in water. These are almost done, I think. And now I'm gonna come back to these very potent shallots. So we do need to chop these up a little bit. This has been soaking now for the enough time, so I'm gonna go drain this and rinse this off really, really well. I've washed these mushrooms very, very well. And so now what we're gonna do is chop them up. You can buy pre-chopped wood ear mushrooms, but I couldn't get them in time. So I just went with the whole ones, and I figured I could take the time to chop them up. And you want them really, really small. Before we finish making this egg roll mixture, my chicken is fully cooked at this point, and this is the chicken we're gonna serve in the soup. I don't want my chicken to get overcooked. So what I'm gonna do is actually fish out this chicken from this broth. This has been simmering away for about an hour now, and we can get the chicken out. So I'm going to go ahead and fish out the chicken thighs. I'm gonna leave the wings in here because I'm not gonna worry about pulling the meat off the chicken wings. I'll just let that continue to simmer on the stove in the broth while this chicken cools down a little bit. I need this chicken to cool down a little bit so we can actually pull the meat off the bones. And I'll just let this broth continue to gently, gently simmer with the chicken wings in the broth. These are the chicken breasts. Ooh, that's hot. I'm gonna go ahead and give this broth a taste test. I'm really curious to see how much chicken flavor we have been able to get from just about an hour, and if the sweetness is on point. Oh my goodness. Wow. I am shocked the amount of flavor we've already extracted from the herbs and the ginger and the star anise. That is gonna be some pretty good stuff. I'm gonna wait. I think it does need a little bit more salt, but I'm gonna wait once I strain all of this, give it another taste test to see if it needs any more sugar or if it needs any more salt. But for now, we're just gonna let this continue to simmer away on the stove while we get to move on to finishing our egg roll filling mixture, since we have all of the components now prepped, because there were quite a few components that actually needed to be prepped. So in this bowl, I have ground pork, 1 pound. I just put a bunch of fresh frozen garlic in there. Now I'm gonna add our noodles, our shallot, the jicama, our wood ear mushrooms, a little bit of sugar, salt, sesame oil, fish sauce, and 2 egg yolks. We're gonna keep the egg whites, so I'm gonna put them in this bowl, and we're gonna need them a little bit later. And now I'm gonna get in there with my hands. They're very, very clean, and I'm gonna go ahead and mix up this mixture. This is our filling now for our egg rolls. I'm glad I cut the recipe in half because I still think that's more than is going to fit in my egg roll wrappers. Now, I did watch a couple videos where you could use spring roll wrappers, not spring roll, yeah, rice paper wrappers, and fry them in that. So we might try that if I run out of the egg roll wrappers. That is an option. So I'm gonna cover that and pop that into the fridge. And then the next thing we're gonna do while we're still waiting for our chicken to cool so that we can pull it off the bones is I'm gonna make up our sauce. We're gonna have a dipping sauce that's gonna go with these egg rolls. I realized I don't have the chili I need to make our 5-minute sauce. So Josh is running to the store for me to grab that chili. Plus I needed bean sprouts for garnish and Thai basil, and he is on the way to the store to get that for me. So while I'm waiting for him, I went ahead and I pulled the meat off the bones, and I've got my white meat on one side of the bowl and my dark meat on the other side of the bowl. And we will put this in our bowl when we go to serve our pho. The broth here, I went ahead and took the star anise out because I'm happy with the flavor of the star anise. And I just added my bones and chicken skin back into the pot. I also removed the cilantro from the pot. And now this is basically just the broth that we made with all those beautiful aromatics and spices, minus the spices and the cilantro. So I'm putting the bones and skins back in so we can just continue to get that yummy chicken flavor out of the bones. I'm just gonna have this on a really light simmer. Oh, perfect. I hear Josh. So he is here now with my red chili. That's what I needed that I was missing. So we can go ahead and make our 5-minute sauce, and then I wanna set the table. It's kind of funny, it's like a 72-degree day today, the hottest day of the year so far, and we're having pho and we're gonna eat it outside. So I need to get the table set outside. We started this dinner early in the day, and so we're gonna have lots of times just to relax between making this meal. But now that I know Josh is here, we're gonna go ahead and get our 5-minute dipping sauce made. I just was looking at the recipe. So I just covered my chicken, so I'm gonna get my chicken and my pickled vegetables into the fridge so they'll be ready for us come dinner. So Josh just got home with all of our goodies. Well, the only thing he just brought was this and the Thai basil. So I'm going to make the sauce, and then we also need garnish for our pho. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that sliced up and diced up too after we finish our sauce. And that way that can just be prepped and ready to go. So in this bowl, I've got garlic, that's fresh minced garlic. Now I'm gonna take this red pepper, and I am gonna remove most of the seeds. If a few seeds get in there, that's okay. And I'm gonna mince this red chili pretty small. I don't even think this sauce is gonna take 5 minutes to come together because I already had that minced garlic in the freezer. Now I'm gonna take the juice of 1 lime and get that into our bowl. Now I'm gonna add water, granulated sugar, chili garlic paste, and fish sauce. And we're gonna let the sugar marinate and dissolve with all these goodies in the fridge until we're ready to fry up our egg rolls and serve this as a yummy dipping sauce for the egg rolls. I'm not gonna taste it in just the seasonings until after we let it sit for a while because we need that sugar to dissolve. Now what I'm gonna do is make up our garnish plates. So when you go to a pho restaurant, they always give you this garnish plate with a bunch of different mixings. So I just washed up bean sprouts, Thai basil, cilantro, and then we already had washed up the jalapeno and the lime. So for the garnish plates, I'm just going to make 2, and I'll put 1 for Josh and I, and we can share, and then 1 for the grandparents that are coming over, and then they can share. And I'm just gonna get this ready now so that it's ready to go when dinner's ready, and then I can just pop this in the fridge until dinner time. So now I'm just gonna lay the Thai basil here and kind of arrange it nicely. That way people can make their pho kind of the way that they like it. Cilantro there. And some cilantro here. Maybe I'll put the cut end down so that it looks pretty. I think I want at least two lime wedges per person. I just tasted our garlic chili sauce. Basically, that's what it is. And it has got a perfect amount of heat to it. I think that it needed a little something, so I went ahead and I added probably about a 1/4 cup of rice wine vinegar, because I thought the vinegar would help kind of balance the sweetness and the chili and the fish sauce. I was worried that this was gonna be a little too fish sauce forward, because that's not Josh's favorite flavor profile, but I think with the vinegar that really balances it out, and I think that everyone is gonna really enjoy this. This is delicious. Now I'm gonna cover these and pop these in the fridge, and they will be ready for us when it comes to dinner time. What inspired this whole cooking day were these bowls that I found. I saw these bowls and I knew that they would be the perfect pho bowls, and this was the inspiration. So I'm gonna set the table now, but I am not going to set the table with the bowls, because we are going to actually dish up the soup in here and then bring it out, because we need to assemble it with the noodles and everything. We still have to cook the noodles, and the broth I still need to strain. So I got those bowls washed, and I'm just gonna set them there. And now I'll head out and get the table set. So I've got some placemats, some napkins. I need to grab chopsticks. I know Josh and I will use chopsticks. I'm not sure if everyone wants to use them, so I'm also gonna grab forks. Spoons. I got these at the thrift store for, I think, 20 cents each. I'm gonna bring out the plum sauce that I picked up for this. I can get that set on the table. So it's pretty sunny out here right now, but by the time it's dinner time, this table should be all in the shade. One thing I want to get made real quick is some lemonade. This is some honey lemonade concentrate we made together, oh gosh, a couple weeks ago. I only made 2 of these. This is the second one. We're going through it because it is so good. So I think I'm gonna need to make a big batch of this, because I know all summer long we're gonna wanna have this honey lemonade concentrate available. I'm gonna fill this about halfway up with water, and then right before the grandparents get here, I'll fill the rest with ice. And I think I'm ready to go ahead and strain that broth so that we can be completely done until we're ready to roll our egg rolls and fry them. And then put the whole entire pho together, because we still need to cook the noodles. But it is only 3:30 right now. I was talking and I filled it almost all the way up with water, but that's okay. I'm gonna pop that in the fridge after I get the lid on it. But that way, the grandparents are getting here till 6:30, so that means I'm gonna have a few hours just to relax and not have to worry about dinner because it'll all be done. So let me get the lid on that, pop that in the outside fridge, and then we're gonna get that strained. I have another strainer over top of my strainer on my bowl because I want to have a fine filter on this broth. That is a beautiful color broth right there. I just rinsed my pot out. I have a little bit more broth to go in there. Now I want to taste this. This is what we've been working for this whole time. Oh my goodness. That has fantastic chicken flavor. I do think it needs a little bit more salt though. And I think I'm gonna add 1 more tablespoon of sugar because pho does have a good amount of sweetness to it. I'm gonna stir that in, let that dissolve. And then I'm gonna give it a taste test in just a minute. Oh. That's all it needed. That's some pretty darn good pho broth. I know that this is my first time, so I have room for improvement, but the sweetness is balancing really well. I can taste the star anise, but it's not overpowering. I'm glad I pulled those out earlier and then let it cook with just the chicken. And I took the cilantro out earlier and let that just sit and kind of get more chickeny flavor without infusing more of the cinnamon and more of the star anise. I think that has a good balance between the spices and the ginger, the garlic, the onions. That is some really good broth. So I'm letting the chicken here continue to drip broth, but I'm gonna put the lid on that and I'm gonna finish just tidying up the kitchen. I only need to wipe the counters down, do a quick little sweep, and then we will be back when we come back in about an hour and a half to start frying our egg rolls, and then we're gonna pull this whole dinner together. So it is time to start making the egg rolls. Now, I did go ahead, I wasn't sure if I was gonna do this, but I did kind of take the first maybe like 4 cups, well, I could tell you right here. See how good I am at estimating. 2.5 cups of broth, and I put it in my fat separator. You can see that clear distinction of where that fat layer is. I don't want all of that in my broth. So I went ahead and I let that sit for, I don't know, about an hour or so. And I'm just gonna skim off the majority of the fat, not all of it. I don't want this to be perfect, but I wanna get some of that off because I don't want it to feel kind of greasy. So that will just set aside, and if you wanna save that, that is gonna make some delicious fried potatoes. This is off, it's still really hot, but I didn't want it to reduce anymore. So I'm just gonna put the lid on and we're gonna turn, actually, I don't think I'm gonna turn the oil on to fry until I have the egg rolls made up. I think what I'm gonna do is roll all of the egg rolls and then fry them all at one time. So I'm not working back and forth. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Now I purchased this egg roll wrapper because this is what 3 of the blog recipes that I read recommended this brand specifically. Now they did say if you cannot get this brand, you can use regular egg roll wrappers, or I saw a couple videos where people used rice paper wrappers. Like if you were gonna make salad rolls, then you could use those as well. And I do have those because I was thinking about making salad rolls, but then I thought we only need 1 appetizer or side with this. And so I went ahead and decided not to make the salad rolls today, but I have what I need if I need to. So this was in the freezer section of my local market, and they're very stuck together. There's no, oh, there are ingredient directions on it. Okay, I'm gonna take this package back. I did put this in my refrigerator this morning, and it does say we need the egg white to roll this up. So I'm just carefully pulling this one wrapper apart. What are these made of? They have a different texture than your regular egg roll wrapper. It is a wheat wrapper, just it has a different texture. This is gonna take me a while just to get through separating these. Now I'm gonna follow these directions on how to roll it and the shape that I'm going for. I just grabbed my egg white from earlier, and I'm not sure where I'm supposed to put the egg white. Oh, I'm supposed to add flour to that. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of flour because I have 2 egg whites. I had to put this in a bigger bowl to whisk it really well. It wasn't quite whisking enough in that little tiny bowl. So here I have 1 wrapper. And what I'm gonna do is just add a little bit of filling. We don't wanna add too much because we need to make sure that the filling cooks all the way through in the time it takes to fry . So I want to be conservative with the filling. And there we go, there's 1. I think I'm gonna put them sealed side down so that they stay sealed. I think I'm gonna go ahead and get going on frying these. I've got my pot here and I need to pull out my thermometer, but I think before I pull out my thermometer, I wanna get some oil heating up. I'm going to do this in peanut oil, and I need about 2 inches of oil in the bottom of the pot, which is going to be all the oil I have. I don't even have 2 inches, I don't think. I have about maybe 1.5 inches. So that'll have to work. So while that's heating up, I can keep rolling more of them. But I do want to get a close eye on what's happening here. So I'm gonna put my digital thermometer that's got a nice big reading pad. I think I should be able to get this to fit on this shallower. Yes, perfect. I'm at 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The recipe that I found for this says that we need our oil at, I'm trying to find it. It's on the back side of this page. 270 degrees Fahrenheit or 132 degrees Celsius. And this says a 1-inch pan, fry for 10 minutes or until golden brown on all sides. And then the packaging says to fry them at 375 degrees, 2 minutes on each side, or until the internal temperature reaches 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And then when I watched videos, they all had different frying temperatures and frying times for the exact same thing. So what I think I'll do is I will start at a lower temperature. We'll start 270, just sounds too low to me, or 132 degrees Celsius. So I think I'm gonna start at 300 because some of the recipes said 350, this one says 375. So we're gonna start at 300. If it's not cooking them all the way through, we'll do a couple test ones. I'll crank the heat up to 375. Out of that one recipe, we were able to get this many. Or actually out of the half recipe. So I'm glad I cut the recipe in half. And we are gonna start frying these. Now I got a little distracted and we're at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. So I've turned the oil way down and I'm just going to go ahead and get these in the fryer. So they are frying, which is good. I do want them to cook a little bit on the lower side because I do want to make sure that the pork gets fully cooked. So I tried to make them skinny as I could. I think I'm gonna start with 2, 4, 6. I don't wanna overcrowd that oil too much because I don't want the oil temperature to drop too much. So it doesn't look like it dropped at all from adding them into the oil. Those are gonna take a while to cook all those through. So while those are cooking, I'm gonna get some water on to boil because we're gonna need to cook our noodles. I'm gonna move this a little bit closer. I'm gonna turn this back burner on and we're gonna get this going for our noodles. And then this is still pretty hot. I think I'm gonna go ahead and turn the stove on this again to get this hot again, because as soon as these are done and the noodles are done, we can assemble all of this dinner. It is now 6:09. So it did take me a little bit of time to get all those made up. Mostly pulling those apart is what took the longest time. This did drop in temperature, so we're at 306. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat up just a little bit because I kind of like that 320 mark for some reason. I don't know why I like it, but I do. And I'm gonna get some tongs. So I think these are done. So we're gonna pull these off and give these a try. We've been holding pretty steady at 320. I just have a plate here with a paper towel. And I'm gonna get some more on here. These took I don't want that to fall, a good 8 or so minutes. So I'm gonna get some more in here. These are gonna cool for just a minute. And while these cool, we're gonna give these a taste test. I'm a little paranoid about making sure they're cooked fully through. The first time I ever tried making egg rolls, I must not have been following a recipe or something, I don't know. I was probably a freshman in college. I think I was in college at that point. And I made these big, huge, delicious looking egg rolls and I used raw meat. And they were raw when we took them out of the fryer, but they were probably 4 times the size of this. So we still ate them. We just put them in the oven and finished them off in the oven and they were delicious. But I'm a little paranoid wanting to make sure that these have enough time to fully cook. And I think I could add a few more to the oil. I have 2, 4, 6, 7. I think I'm gonna try cooking 8 at a time. So while those cook, let's cut into one of these and see if they're fully cooked. Bring this over here. Well, that has a beautiful crunch. And that looks fully cooked all the way through. This is scalding, so we can't quite, oh yeah, that's fully cooked. And extremely crunchy. Put that into a few pieces so it cools a little faster. The cook gets the first bite. I just dipped it into our 5-minute sauce. I'm glad I added just that little bit of vinegar. That is so good. So I'm gonna keep frying these. I need to turn this up because we're gonna be eating dinner here pretty soon. The grandparents, I can see them walking in. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some noodles cooking. Our water is boiling. I'm gonna turn the water off. So I don't really need to boil these noodles, I just need them to soak in boiling water. I don't know how much to make. We'll go with that much to start. If I need to make more, I can. I turned the wrong stove off, so I need to make sure I keep my frying oil on, but I need to turn this one off. This is when it always feels like it gets a little bit crazy whenever I make one of these meals where I have some people over. But it's kind of what makes it fun as well, because this is where you get to see the fruits of your labor come together and you get to see all of your work in one spot. And I just really enjoy this part. But it does sometimes feel a little bit hectic at this point of when we have friends over or family over for dinner. So once I let these noodles soak in the hot water, I strained them and then I ran them under some cold water to stop the cooking process. And at this point, I have turned the broth up to a rolling boil. I want this broth piping hot as I can get it, so that when I pour it over the noodles, it will finish cooking the noodles, it will heat the noodles through and also heat the chicken through. So I just topped my bowls with my pre-cooked chicken that we cooked earlier, and then I am continuing to cook these egg rolls. I did underestimate the time it would take me to cook these egg rolls because each batch took about 8 to 10 minutes to cook these fully. And so it probably ended up taking me about 45 minutes to cook all the ones I did and roll them as well. And so we didn't end up eating dinner till closer to 7, and I still didn't even end up cooking all of the egg rolls because I just knew it was going to be way more than we needed. So I popped the ones that I didn't cook in the freezer. I haven't cooked those from frozen yet, but the recipe said we could do that. So that's what I went ahead and did. And they cooked up beautifully. They were crunchy and savory and sweet and delicious. So the grandparents have stepped in, Josh has stepped in, and they're all asking what can they do to help. So they went ahead and got the waters on the table. They took out the vegetables for me and put those on the table. And I'm now scooping this piping hot broth over our bowls of noodles and chicken. And once I have 2 of them filled, Josh ends up taking those out to the table, and I continue to fill these up with broth. And then we are able to sit down and enjoy a wonderful dinner. I will say that this turned out better than I anticipated, and it was definitely a big learning opportunity for me because there were a few things that I would do a little bit different, and I'll share with you those in just a minute. But here is what the table looks like and the meal looks like. We get to garnish our bowls how we want, and we get to enjoy a very delicious and savory dinner on this beautiful evening. Friend, that was a fantastic dinner. I am so glad I did not make dessert. I went back and forth in my head if I was going to make dessert or not, but we are all so full. It was incredible. I only ended up cooking about half the egg rolls, and the other half I'm going to throw in the freezer. I was reading the directions and it says you can freeze them before you cook them. So that's what I'm going to do because we don't need egg roll leftovers. I do have a little bit of broth. Now the flavor on point. The one thing is I think I overcooked the noodles because they kind of broke up in the bowl a little bit. And so I need to work on my timing when it comes to this, on having the broth hot, the noodles hot, and the chicken all hot, and not to overcook the noodles, but the flavor was great. So I'm gonna make this again, and I'm gonna practice on my timing. If you want any of these recipes, I will link them down below. The carrot pickle was a huge hit. Everything was a hit. Everyone loved the dipping sauce, and I'm just super happy with how this turned out. It definitely feels good to finally have a really good pho broth under my belt so that I can move forward and continue to work on timing. I do have a mountain of dishes because my dishwasher is clean, and Josh is going to do the dishes for me tonight, so I don't need to worry about doing the dishes. And if you enjoyed this, thank you for being here. I can pop a video right here where I make an entire like Mediterranean style dinner from scratch, and down here I'll just pop another video if you want to watch a video between now and my next upload. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.